Okay, you guys, if you're watching right now on YouTube, you know that Dr. Richard Horowitz, who is just amazing, is on today. And we're going to talk about what he's been able to do in Washington when it comes to Lyme disease. What are some of the reports? What are some of the awarenesses that have come from his work there? And so today I'm asking you to stay tuned, because this is going to be a great way to empower ourselves. So the doctor's in the house, so fasten your seatbelt, because we're going to learn and grow together. Oh, by the way, Dr. Horowitz, it's been a while since we've danced together. What's the music?
That's true.
Here comes the music. We're going to be muted in a little.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who have been tuning in to the Lillian McDermott radio show / classroom since 2011, or maybe just tuned in yesterday for the first time, welcome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you are back. But if this is the first time that you've tuned in, and you're like, somebody just said, hey, you should tune in because Dr. Richard Horowitz is on in the classroom, then please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends at facebook.com/Lillian's radio show, or perhaps maybe you're tuning in on Dr. Horowitz' Facebook page. I don't care how you got here. I am so thrilled that you are, because this is where we learn new truths, and we embrace a new truth and live the life of our dreams. Now, many years ago, I'm not kidding, but 3 years ago, I received this book in the mail by one of the people that feed these wonderful teachers that we have in our classroom. And it's sad. This thick book, it's so intimidating. It sat on my desk for such a long time, but it kept calling me and it kept calling me. And that's when I picked up the book and I thought, holy, who sent me this book? And I asked Ashley to reach out to Dr. Horowitz, or to his PR person. And the next thing you know, we had Dr. Horowitz in the classroom. At the time, it was the show, the radio show. And all of a sudden, I realized, yes, and he was the one that said, we need to become our own MD, medical detective. So since then, he was on, in the classroom, once every 2 months, every 3 months. And then he was snatched by Washington, just taken away from me. And he is back, and he's in a bit of a break right now. Lots of wonderful things happening. But if you've ever been told that you have Lyme disease, or if you have multiple symptoms, but no one can figure out what you have, and you've been labeled as, put aside and giving you a label and medication that's not working for you, this guy will change your life. The information that he provides, his 16-point steps on healing. I've had so many people say, oh, you should have Dr. Horowitz on your show. Oh, yeah, well, he has been, and we've been waiting for him. And today's the day that we get to get an update. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. Richard Horowitz is back to do just that. Welcome back, Dr. Horowitz. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you, Lillian. It's great being here.
And catching up with you. Oh my goodness. So share a little bit about your background, how you stumbled upon Lyme disease and why that became your passion.
So I'm a board certified internist, and I had finished my training at Mount Sinai in New York City. And I thought it would be nice to move up to the mountains and rivers and be a country doc. And I was close enough to my parents who lived in Whitestone in the Bayside area. It was an easy car ride or train. So I moved upstate, became assistant director of medicine at one of the local hospitals, and didn't know I was moving into one of the largest Lyme endemic areas in the country. This was over 30 years ago. And since that time, I've seen over 13,000 chronically ill Lyme patients. They come from all over the US, they come from Europe, they've come from Canada, from New Zealand, from Australia, they've come from all over. It's literally a worldwide epidemic. There isn't one place in the world that has now been invaded by ticks. And I used to joke with Pat Smith from the Lyme Disease Association, I was going to go to Antarctica, and then she sent me a picture of penguins with ticks on them. So they're all over at this point. You can't really avoid them. So,
yes. And I hear that in Florida, we have Lone Star. It sounds like a cowboy.
You know, Florida actually is interesting because years ago, people didn't realize how they thought, oh, there's no Lyme in Florida. And Quest Diagnostics, they did a study about a year ago, and Florida turned out on the map where there was a lot more cases showing up in Florida. But it's true, you don't just have the deer tick, the Ixodes tick, you also have the Lone Star tick, which has like a little white spot on the back. It looks like a watermelon seed. Mm-hmm. And that tick it's quite dangerous because even if it doesn't give you tularemia or Ehrlichia or Rocky Mountain spotted fever or viruses, the Heartland virus, the Bourbon virus, there's all kinds of different infections that are in this tick. It's also carrying something in its saliva, and we don't know how it's transmitted, called alpha-gal allergy. So people develop an allergy to red meat or meat products after they get a tick bite. So what happens is you're eating your nice steak at 6 o'clock in the evening, and at 12 o'clock, all of a sudden you can't breathe, you break out in hives, you're wheezing, and you go to the emergency room for an anaphylactic reaction. And it happened about 4 to 6 hours after you ate meat. And this is now happening from the bite of the Lone Star tick. So people have to be very careful with tick prevention. So yeah, there's a lot of different diseases that are now showing up out there.
What it's amazing. It's amazing. So you're thinking you're thinking that you've had a bite, you don't think anything of it, but like when you said can't eat meat, I when I was younger, I just couldn't digest it. So I just thought it was a digestive issue. Could that be also a potential Lyme disease tick bite, or maybe not?
No, digestion issues would be different. I mean, that can be enzyme deficiencies or something else going on. But no, this is actually getting quite sick and can be life-threatening in people who have it. So in this Washington group that I'd recently been elected to, we did a report in our subcommittee on alpha-gal. It's becoming a really big problem, and we need the FDA at this point to start labeling products, because things that have gelatin or beef products in it can also trigger this. So it can be in drugs, it can be in capsules, it can be in nutritional supplements. It's not just eating meat. So we've got a big problem on our hands, and people need to know the one thing you have to go home with today after this interview we're doing is prevention, prevention, prevention. There's over 18 different tick-borne diseases now that can be transmitted. Several of them are deadly. In fact, most of them can be deadly. We're seeing outbreaks of Powassan virus. It's a tick-borne viral infection. And if you're living in a Lyme endemic area like the Northeast or parts of the Midwest like Wisconsin, we're seeing 10 to 16% of the people who test positive for Lyme have now been exposed to this virus, and it gets into your body within 15 minutes of a tick bite. Meaning, if you don't protect yourself against ticks, that virus can get in within 15 minutes. We just had a gentleman die about a month ago in Ulster County, near where I live, from Powassan encephalitis, from brain swelling, from this tick-borne virus. So there are these deadly viruses. Some of the other tick-borne infections like ehrlichiosis, anaplasmosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, There are death rates, mortality rates of 1 to 3% in some of these. Kids die every year from Rocky Mountain spotted fever because the pediatricians don't want to give them doxycycline because they think it's going to affect the enamel on their teeth. And actually the CDC and others have shown that that's not the case. So we have to be careful. It's not just about getting sick with a chronic fatiguing, musculoskeletal, neuropsychiatric type illness. It's also about, being very careful because there are illnesses that can kill you that are in these ticks. And by the way, these tick-borne infections, some of them are in the blood supply. So babesiosis, it's a malaria-like organism in ticks. It's in the blood supply. It's the most common tick-borne parasitic infection that's being transmitted by blood transfusions. Ehrlichia, anaplasma, Colorado tick fever, Bartonella. There's a lot of different tick-borne infections, relapsing fever, Borrelia miyamotoi. They can be transmitted by a blood transfusion.
Oh my goodness.
Pregnant women can transmit some of these infections from their children to their unborn child. With a transplantation, let's say you get a liver transplant or a kidney transplant, you had babesia. You could get babesia from a transplant. So it's not just about tick-borne infections. It's also about blood and maternal fetal transmission. And so people just have to be aware, we're in a real epidemic of tick-borne diseases. And I know a lot of people are educated, but you have to stay educated. There are new ticks that are coming out all the time, like the Asian bush tick that showed up a couple of years ago. Now, thank God, this tick is a hermaphrodite. It reproduces without needing a blood meal.
Oh
but it's spreading like wildfire throughout the Northeast. Every couple of months, there's a new state that is now being affected. And in Asia, it's containing a virus, again, which can kill people, as well as the alpha-gal allergy. So we haven't picked those up in the Asian bush tick yet here, but the birds are carrying these ticks. So we're getting all these new tick infections that are now showing up, and new ticks that are actually showing up in the United States. Prevention,
Okay.
and learn about this.
Okay, so prevention. So, and with everything that you said, it's so overwhelming. It's like, I just want to lock myself indoors. And, but how do we prevent a tick bite?
So the easiest way, and I have these in my book, How Can I Get Better? And if you look also on the Tick-Borne Disease Working Group website, so in my book, How Can I Get Better? And on the website, which people can go to get educated for really the most up-to-date scientific information on tick-borne diseases, you go on HHS.gov. Mm-hmm. HHS stands for Health and Human Services. HHS.gov / Tick-Borne Disease Working Group.
Yes. If
you go on that site, you'll see the report to Congress that we gave to Congress. I had the honor of serving on this committee with members of the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, the Department of Defense, wonderful researchers, a lot of great people from the public, some of the Lyme groups, the supporters that were out there, sick patients were on there. We had a very, very good meeting, I would say, of minds, because this was the first time that people from opposing views would come together and have an open dialogue. And if you look at the website, you look at these reports to Congress and the subcommittee reports, you'll see that our group did a lot of hard work looking at all the new science on Lyme and tick-borne diseases, looking at co-infections, looking at prevention, epidemiology, how is it spreading, what are the problems with access to care, a lot of great patient stories. Nicole Malachowski, who is the first Air Force pilot to fly F-15s, she was affectionately known as Fifi. I think from what I understand from her, they spent over millions of dollars training her. She got so sick she couldn't work at that point for the Air Force, and she had to quit. And she was the first female fighter pilot to basically get up in the air and do it. And she was training squadrons of fighters. Neil Spector, he's a doctor at Duke University. He got Lyme carditis. He almost died needing a heart transplant because his heart gave out from an infection with Lyme that he had for years. Julia Brucesi, a young woman, went to 60 doctors who didn't diagnose her. She's now paralyzed in a wheelchair, unable to walk. These stories are in the congressional report. You can read them, and you can read about all the updates that we gave to Congress and a lot of the new science that is now emerging.
Okay, so we have lots of questions, and just hold on a second, because once we get to the third question, let me see if I can click on here so that I can see all the questions that you guys have. We have about 4 or 5 questions already, Dr. Horowitz. You see, this is what you do. This is what you do. Okay, so we have our first question is, Christina says that she was very ill, but found out that she had leaky gut, candida, and wheat allergies. Since addressing these issues, she feels great. She said, I had, let me see, hold on a second. These questions, I'm having a hard time getting to it. Okay. She said, since then, I feel great. I had done a month ago, let's see, let me go click up, of Cephin? What is that? Keflin? Is that an antibiotic?
Keflex? I'm not sure.
It says it's CE, it's really hard for me to read here because it's very small. Ceftin.
Oh, Ceftin. It's an antibiotic used for Lyme disease.
She said before this, she didn't have co-infections. I feel great now. And so she's wondering if, and that question, okay, and let's make our questions short. Let's say let's see, because it's very hard for me to pinpoint here. I feel great now. So should I worry that I still have Lyme or just go by now how I feel? It's been 10 years. They thought it looked like the past infection never told me or treated it.
So the key to medicine, and especially with Lyme, is you treat patients, you don't treat blood tests. An antibody test just means you've been exposed. It doesn't mean you're active. Mm-hmm. So in my book, I have a section under the 16-point MSIDS map on GI, on gastrointestinal, mm-hmm. and we do discuss leaky gut, candida, wheat allergies. In fact, there's new treatments for leaky gut. There's a product, immunoglobulin G26, it's immunoglobulins. And for people that have food allergies from leaky gut, when you take this product with immunoglobulins, it surrounds the food particles, so your immune system does not recognize it as a foreign invader. There's also a new product that just came out from Metagenics called Ultraflora Integrity. It's a specific strain of a probiotic that has been shown to help heal leaky gut. So these products basically lower zonulin, which is a marker of leaky gut, and raise an enzyme in the gut and in your blood called DAO, diamine oxidase, which helps you to degrade histamine, because a lot of people with leaky gut and candida, they get itching, sometimes they get wheezing, they get muscle aches and pain. Candida, in fact, can look like Lyme. The difference is you get worse when you eat carbohydrates and sugars, and you don't normally have good and bad days where the symptoms migrate all over your body. Migratory pain,
yes, let's talk about that. Let's talk
joint
about
pain.
Symptoms. Yes.
Yeah, so muscle pain, joint pain, or nerve pain, tingling, numbness, burning, stabbing that migrates, that's Lyme. But if you have fatigue and headaches and joint pain, that's not migratory and responds when you get on a proper diet and healing your gut, that could just be a case of leaky gut and candida. So I wouldn't worry so much if you've done Ceftin and you're not having any symptoms. It's really nothing you have to worry about right now. Most people with Lyme, they're going to know if it's coming back, because most of the time, if they're stressed, if their adrenals are low, they don't get enough sleep, they got in a car accident. I mean, many people, when they have stressors in their lives, the infections come out. But if this person's been well for a long period of time, I wouldn't worry. It's like, take your blessings day by day. You're well, great. Enjoy your life. Just be careful with ticks with prevention.
Yes. And so she says that she has one weird symptom, which is her front teeth are really sensitive to pressure. So I don't know how that, if that makes any sense to you.
It's not specific for Lyme or for, candida leaky gut. Okay. So I can't tell you exactly what it's due to.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next question is from Melanie. She says antibiotics and pharmaceuticals still are the most effective way to treat Lyme?
So it's a great question. So this brings me to some of the newest studies that we published in the medical literature in the last year. So part of the reason I haven't been on your show is I've been busy working in Washington, publishing articles, writing new books, doing a whole bunch of things.
Yes.
So 2 of the articles that we published, and people can go online and they can read these. If they do a search, the articles were called Precision Medicine, Part 1 and Part 2. One was published in the International Journal of General Medicine this year, February 2019. The other was published, Precision Medicine Part 2 was published in the journal Healthcare, and that was in November 2018. So what these studies basically did is they looked at 200 of our sickest patients with chronic Lyme disease or post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome. These are the people that had a bullseye rash, got treated, and was still sick. And we found that there are new protocols for treating chronic Lyme disease. My wife is now almost 2 years in remission with this protocol, has not relapsed. I had 110 people. I've not yet published this. This is all, this will be published soon, or at least case studies on it. And I'm putting in for a grant to look at this. We had 110 people. I had a gentleman come in who took the dapsone combination therapy. So what I did is I looked at the literature and I looked at tuberculosis, leprosy type drugs, because in the last 5 years, researchers from great universities like Johns Hopkins University, Stanford University, Northeastern University, Dr. Shoppy from the University of New Haven, they've been publishing on biofilms that just like you go to the dentist and you get the plaque taken off of your teeth so you don't get gingivitis and get sick, similarly, they've been finding these Lyme spirochetes hiding in biofilms, and the biofilms are protecting the bugs. Then they also found that they have these persister forms. So tuberculosis and leprosy are persister bacteria. You need kind of longer courses with certain drugs to be able to hit them. So what I did is I used some of these persister drugs used for tuberculosis and leprosy. And the regimen I'm using is 8 to 12 weeks. That's it. Oral, generic, cheap medication. And with these drug regimens, out of these 110 people who did this higher dose dapsone protocol, about roughly 70 out of 110 who've been sick for months, for years, have stayed in remission.
And this is a 12-week protocol, you said?
This is somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks. Now, where I found out about this protocol is a gentleman came into my office and accidentally took a double dose of the dapsone. He had been sick for about 8 years. He had been on the regular dose for 3 months with doxycycline, rifampin, and dapsone. And you could read about, in these precision medicine studies, you'll read about the dapsone protocol as well as all the co-infections we found, Babesia, Bartonella. The second one, you'll read about what else did we find making people sick, like heavy metals, mold, mineral deficiencies, immune deficiency, where the Lyme was affecting the immune system and your body can't make antibodies to fight the bacteria, sleep problems, psychological issues.
Breast implant illness,
We do see people who are clearly chemically sensitive to things that are implanted in their body. By the way, breast implant illness is a biofilm illness. So just like Lyme has been shown to be a biofilm illness, they're now showing that breast implant illness can be the same.
Could it be that people who have breast implant illness were bitten by a tick?
I don't think it's as simple as that, but what I think it comes down to is, well, they're now showing biofilm. They've shown that biofilms actually are responsible for many chronic diseases. The NIH has actually shown this years ago. Whether you're talking about Clostridium difficile diarrhea or Candida or Salmonella or endocarditis, an infection of your heart valves, these are biofilm infections. Some reason people thought it didn't apply to Lyme. Well, it turns out that when I've used 3 biofilm agents, stevia from Nutrimetics, which is in Jupiter, Florida, by the way, that's where they make it, biocidin, which is an herbal protocol, and also using oregano oil, and this comes out of Johns Hopkins. 3 agents that disrupt biofilms with doxy, rifampin, dapsone is showing tremendous promise in basically, and I can't 100% say cure, but let's just say putting people in remission where they're not having any symptoms, and a lot of these people have failed every traditional protocol you could possibly imagine. So I just put in for a grant today to do a multi-center, prospective, placebo-controlled, triple-blinded study to basically look at dapsone so we can show to the world once and for all that this is a protocol that helps to help all of these people who have chronic Lyme symptoms that say, I don't know where to turn, there's no answers. So I'm hoping that I will be involved in this in the next couple of years.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so we have lots of questions, so please be patient. I still want to, okay, you've spent 2 years in Washington, and there has been, you've created some reports, you've learned about new protocols and all these things. Do you feel that your time there will be worth from generation to generation? Do you feel that, because we hear about the pharmaceutical industry, we hear about the government, that they're not doing enough for the real causes, the real people out there? And so how has your perspective of Washington changed? And where do you think your work is how is it going to help us all?
So I do think the work that we did in Washington, the first group of people, the 7 public members and the 7 members of the government who came together, you have to realize this was really an inaugural event. We've never had before governmental agencies like the NIH, the FDA, the CDC, the Department of Defense come together with people like me sitting around a table and having an open conversation. And you can believe me, it was an open conversation. I was born with.
Heated? Was it ever heated?
No.
Good,
Everyone
good.
was very respectful, very respectful. And, I have very little filter between my brain and my mouth, so I make sure that what I need to say generally gets said. And what I found happened over time is there was a mutual respect that started to happen, that I started having, understanding where the CDC was coming from and their difficulties in getting funding. Like in the congressional document, one of the things that's highlighted is that, for Zika, they got over $1 billion years ago, and Lyme disease got $25,000. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's the #1 vector-spawn epidemic in the United States, and it's spreading worldwide. So we're addressing the inequalities with the funding. In this, we talk about basically the diagnostics and the fact that the diagnostics are not accurate. Now, this is coming from, again, governmental agencies, not just people out in the public. We talk in the treatment section of the reports that there is some evidence that Lyme can persist. There's still questions as far as why people are sick. Not so much, by the way, from my perspective. I mean, I don't mean to say this with hubris. It's just I've been doing this for 32 years for 13,000 people. I really know, not everything, of course. No one knows everything, but I know most of the reasons why these people are ill. How do I know? I do this day in and day out, and I've seen these persister protocols with dapsone and biofilm agents make a huge difference in the last decade. We didn't have these tools 10 years ago. So, when you use the MSIDS map and you look at all the sources of inflammation coming from the body, I'm not sleeping. Patients with Lyme don't sleep. If you don't sleep and you keep waking up in the middle of the night, the inflammatory response doesn't shut off. And it's inflammation that's giving you your fatigue and your pain and your brain fog and your memory problems and your mood disorder, right? And your joint and muscle and nerve pain. It's all from inflammation. But also, if you've got the wrong bacteria in your gut, your microbiome, that causes inflammation. If you have Babesia or Bartonella or co-infections, that causes inflammation. These persistiforms and biofilms cause inflammation. Heavy metals and mold can cause inflammation with downstream effects on the hormones and the mitochondria, the parts of the cells that make energy, affecting your blood pressure. The point is, this 16-point model, when you use it combined with dapsone combination therapy, 97% of these patients are getting better. Now, some are a little better, some are moderately better. And if you were to read a piece that came out at the Atlantic magazine, it just came out today early on, and I would advise people to go read the article by Megan.
And I'll share it on my page as well.
Yeah, by Megan O'Rourke. It's a great story about how long she suffered, how many doctors she went through, and how she got help with the protocols we were using. She came to see me, and I didn't even use the persister protocols. I'm just talking about using Lyme 101 basic antibiotics. She still got significantly better, had 2 healthy children, and she's ready now to do some of the persister protocols. But I'm very excited. This feels like a turning point, honestly, politically and medically. And if we can get these prospective studies done, we will finally answer the questions that the infectious disease doctors and everyone's been asking. Is it really, truly a chronic persistent infection? Well, yes, it is, but it's not just Lyme. It's relapsing fever bacteria, it's persistent Bartonella, it's persistent Babesia, it's persistent tularemia, it's persistent Brucella, it's persistent viruses like Epstein-Barr, herpes virus 6. This is not this is a complex illness. You just have to know where to look.
You are a great medical detective. I must say, I said that at the beginning, that you were the one that said we need to be our own medical detective, our own MD, but you're giving us the tools. And this book, How Can I Get Better? You guys can get it on Amazon. You can also go to cangetbetter.com. There's so many different ways to empower yourself to live the life that you want. I wanted to shift to ask some more questions because I know that there's so many people waiting. Dr. Horowitz, Jill wants to know, what you think about hypothermia for killing Lyme.
So years ago, they showed that the Lyme spirochete, just like syphilis, was sensitive to heat. In the older studies that were done, if you raise your body temperature even to 102 degrees Fahrenheit, IV Rocephin, ceftriaxone, has been shown to be 4 to 16 times more effective. Now, what they do in clinics like in Germany, where they do hyperthermia, is they heat people up to around 106, 107. This is normally developed for cancer treatments. Have I seen people get better with it? I have, because the spirochetes can be affected by heat. But do I think it's necessarily a cure for people? The answer is no. There are some that definitely go in remission for periods of time. And I think it knocks down the load of the organisms, but I don't know that it knocks it out completely. And I've spoken to the doctors in Germany at this clinic where they do it, at St. George's Clinic. And part of the thing they're not doing there, at least from my patients and others I know who've gone, is they're not using biofilm agents. They're not using agents that hit these persister forms. And this is a very easy thing to do a day or two before you start the hyperthermia. And if I were them, I would basically look at this because it might increase the efficacy of the treatment. But so the answer is yes, it can be helpful. Just like for some, hyperbaric oxygen can be helpful. There are some people who do integrative functional medicine. They will tell you that oxidative therapies with ozone and stuff can be helpful, although you've got to be careful with it. But, you know, I've listened to the stories. I don't do these things personally myself, but I've listened to patients' stories over 30 years of what they've done because they're desperate. They're looking for answers and they don't know where to turn. So a lot of these integrative therapies do help. But honestly, and I told this in Washington, the committee, the NIH used to have basically a part of the NIH that would look at alternative and complementary medicine. There's no reason in the world that they can't get funding to look at hyperthermia for Lyme. Maybe it would provide a simpler and faster solution. Why not? Maybe the Dapsone protocol I'm talking about with 2 treatments of hyperthermia would knock it out in a month. We don't know until we do the studies, but you got to get funding and the NIH has to take an interest. And, you know, look, the big pharma and the pharmaceutical drugs, obviously there's issues, but I use standard pharmaceuticals and God bless them. They really help my patients, but you also have to do integrative functional medicine.
Correct.
You can't just do, you know, pharmaceuticals if you're going to get people better.
One size does not fit all.
Absolutely not.
And we need to understand that when you take one pill, that's saying that everybody's going to get better from this pill. It's not real.
No.
So we've got to be our own advocates. And so when you're talking about these persister drugs, are there any side effects to these persister drugs? Because you talked about stevia and oregano oil, which I know they're great, but persister drugs.
Right. So the biofilm busters like stevia, biocidin, oregano oil, lauricidin, monolaurin, serapeptase, EDTA, there's a lot of agents for biofilm. But among the persister drugs, the big ones right now are Dapsone and another one called disulfiram. Disulfiram was studied at Stanford University by Dr. J.
Yep.
Yeah, I figured that one would come up. And they showed basically in culture that it was one of the most effective drugs for persisters. So about 3 or 4 months ago, a colleague of mine, great Lyme doctor, Dr. Kenneth Liegner, published the first 3 clinical cases on disulfiram for Lyme and Babesia. And he used it for 3 months, regular dose, 250 milligrams twice a day. This drug, by the way, causes a lot of Herxheimer reactions, a lot of inflammatory responses, not an easy drug to take. I used to think Dapsone caused big Herxes. This drug has now moved to the #1 on my list of causing Herxheimer reactions. Dapsone's got a half-life of like 28 hours. It's out of your body in a few days. Disulfiram has a half-life of about 14 days. Ooh. So once you start herxing, this drug's in your body for a long time. Now, that being said, I have 120 people right now in 3 arms of a clinical study. 1 arm, disulfiram alone. 1 arm, doxyrifampin and disulfiram. So I can compare it to like doxyrifampin Dapsone, which has been working well. And the other arm is doxyrifampin Dapsone, where I add disulfiram, so people are on 2 persister drugs. And it's very interesting watching the responses. Now, you know, I'll have to collect the data and I'll do a retrospective study and hopefully have a chance to publish it next year. But what I'm seeing so far is this is a very potent drug. I have to start off with tiny doses of disulfiram, like a half a pill twice a week for the first couple of weeks, then a half a pill every other day for the next couple of weeks, then a half a pill a day for the next 2 weeks. Then one pill one day, a half a next. It takes me months to get up to a full dose of just one pill twice a day because people are really having severe Herxheimer reactions where the inflammation gets worse and all their symptoms get worse and they really can't function well.
Yeah, and they have to stop the study.
So we don't know yet how effective disulfiram is going to be in the long term because Ken Liegner only published on 3 cases. I will have a much better sense myself next year. Brian Fallon, who's a great researcher, great psychiatrist who did one of the NIH double-blind placebo-controlled studies. He's doing a small clinical study on disulfiram out of Columbia University with 30 patients. I've already got 120 that we're looking at. And Brian was worried about the side effects like neuropathy, but so far I really haven't seen it. Most of what I've seen is just horrible brain fog, horrible fatigue. So I don't yet have the answers of how this is going to work, whether disulfiram alone is it as good or better than dapsone? Is disulfiram and dapsone better than dapsone alone? I have a lot of unanswered questions, but I will know hopefully by sometime next year where kind of the chips are going to fall. And it's very exciting at this time. And thank God, honestly, for the researchers, these university-based PhD researchers, Dr. Ying Zhang, Dr. Jay at Stanford, Dr. Kim Lewis at Northeastern, Dr. Eva Shapi at the University of, if it wasn't for them, we would not know about these persisters. We would not know about the biofilm agents. And I have a study that's in peer review right now. It's a 52-page paper looking in culture at how dapsone and dapsone combination therapy works on the different forms of Borrelia, specifically the most resistant forms, the biofilm forms and the persisters. And you'll see when the article gets published, dapsone was the #1 drug for hitting the persister forms, and doxyrifampin dapsone was the #1 drug for basically hitting the biofilm forms. So I did it backwards. Normally people do it in culture and then take it into the clinic. I first found out what worked in the clinic, and then I took it back to the culture and said, can we see if this works or not? And it turned out that everything we were seeing in the clinic actually panned out.
How can, because there's so many people. Thank you so much for watching today. I'm so excited. I hope that you continue learning and growing in the classroom with all our teachers. But how can somebody who really is sick get involved in one of these clinical trials or studies or anything so that we can, be a part of the exploration and growth in this process?
So you should check through the local Lyme groups, LDA.org, the Lyme Disease Association with Pat Smith. She's great. I mean, she posts stuff all the time on anything new in Lyme. A lot of the big Lyme foundations focus on Lyme, Live Lyme Foundation. There are many good Lyme organizations out there. I would contact your local organization to find out about the clinical trials. Now, the Cohen Foundation, I forget the amount of millions. I think it's 150 million or 250 million they've pledged towards Lyme research. So there's a call out for grants now, and I know several researchers are submitting grants. So there will probably be a whole new set of clinical trials that are going to be out in 2020 after the Cohen Foundation reviews the grants. So I would stay open, go on the Cohen Foundation's website, check in. There's going to be a lot of new studies, I have a feeling, that are coming out next year.
That's awesome. What a difference you're making. Not only have you made a difference with us, your patients, people that you are able to reach, because I'm hoping that everybody that is listening today has a notebook, but know that this class is going to be posted on YouTube later on, so you can watch it over and over and over again and take some notes, because there's so much that's coming at us, Dr. Horowitz. It's very overwhelming. I love that you have the 16 points that, that we can help ourselves and we can start kind of eliminating this. But, there's so much that we don't know. And I'm just so grateful that you are not only making a difference within your circle, but you've gone much larger, going to Washington and the grants and everything that it's so exciting. I see it. I mean, you've been doing this for over 30 years, right?
Correct.
And you're so excited and you're still so passionate.
We're really close. I mean, there is hope for the Lyme community, and I've said this many times when I'm interviewed. I'm again a man with very little filter between brain and mouth. When I tell the Lyme community there is hope, my wife is now going on 2 years, and she was relapsing for 21 years of our marriage and sick for another decade before we even met. Oh. So the thing is I've seen ill patients for decades, who are responding to the dapsone combination therapy. And that's why for people who are interested, you should share this with your doctors. Precision, just look up my name, Dr. Richard Horowitz, Precision Medicine Part 1, Precision Medicine Part 2, the journal Healthcare, the International Journal of General Medicine. And you'll see in these articles all the updates. My publisher, in fact, from St. Martin's wanted me to write a third book on Lyme. And I said, why would I just write a third book? I just wrote 52 pages and 2 published articles. That is all the updates anyone could want to know.
Yes.
So it's free. Just go on and read these articles and share them with your doctor, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying to get the information out there. It's a lot of work, by the way, to publish these articles. I don't think people understand behind the scenes what it's like. But it's, again, these researchers, we wouldn't be able to do what we do if it wasn't for the great researchers. And for the Lyme organizations, like we were sponsored by Bay Area Lyme. Bay Area Lyme has been working with the Cohen Foundation for years, the MSIDS Research Foundation, which is a 501c3 that I help form. We've gotten grants from people. I mean, if it wasn't for people's generosity and these great Lyme foundations, we wouldn't be moving ahead because, again, the government funding has been lagging. Now we're going to look at the congressional report and see, okay, we gave Congress recommendations. We told them we need more money. Now we're going to look at what the appropriations are going to be coming out in 2020, but I'm sure we're going to be getting more funds. At least I hope that'll be the case. We'll know very shortly.
Is there anything we can do to make sure that those funds are coming? Can we write to a Congress? What can we do?
Absolutely. One of the most important things, and I've told this to people all the time, is tell your story at the local level, to your state representatives, in the assembly and the state level. Speak to your congressmen, speak to your senators. I went to Washington twice. The last time I went, apart from the tick-borne working group, I drove 537 copies of my book signed, and I gave them out to every member of Congress shortly after the book came out because I want to educate Congress about this.
Yes.
So it's very important. My patients have gone to the local representatives, told their stories. It does make a difference.
Great.
So never think that your story is lost. The reason, by the way, the tick-borne working group, and people should know this, they accept emails. If you go on HHS.gov /tick-borne working group, you will see that there's a place for emails. All you have to do is go on the email link and tell your story. If you have a story to tell about what needs to be done, how you have suffered, what help you've gotten from a treatment, whatever it is, tell your story, and they are accepting these emails. I was working with Kristen Honey when she was on the group last year, and I was one of the people reading every one of these emails that was coming from the public. I was working with a great group of people, and I can tell you the alpha-gal got put on the map because the women with alpha-gal in the South just kept raising their voices and showing up at the meetings and telling people how sick they were, and the squeaky wheel really, did get lubricated. So,
Good.
Speak up, tell
Good.
people what's going on.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Okay, so I want to shift a little again. You talk about the generosity of the people that have helped with these grants, with everything that's going on. I also want to stop and acknowledge the generosity of my sponsors who make sure that the classroom is still going. These are, if you go to whenyouneedafriend.com, hopefully you will subscribe. And when you subscribe, you can click onto all the different social media icons, YouTube. And when you subscribe and you follow, you get these notifications and you get free stuff all the time in the classroom. So I want to encourage you.
Free stuff. Oh my God, people have to go on.
Yes. If Dr. Horowitz says so, everybody, there's a rush. My system is going to go haywire here. So go to whenyouneedafriend.com, become a subscriber, and make sure you share this information. Help us grow the classroom. But also the sponsors that are allowing this to continue on, like Liberty Health Share at libertyhealthshare.org, Keep Me Safe Organics, to keep the toxicity out of your beauty products, and you get 10% off. Those are the part of the things that you get for being a member of the classroom. So Keep Me Safe Organics Worldwide is the only makeup that I use in beauty products. First Alternative Care, 24/7 medical doctors, non-urgent, dermatology, and 3 hours a year behavioral health counseling for your entire household for $45 a month. And it's just unbelievable. It's unlimited for the entire household. So check it out. Also, Dr. Stephen Grable, who is a complementary, functional, holistic doctor, MD, and Jacksonville, Florida. People come from all over to be healed. He's a student of Dr. Lee Cowden. Dr. Horowitz knows Dr. Lee Cowden very well. The pharmacy in Merritt Island, mention my name, get 20% off your entire first order. And Live Longer Medical, who has stepped up also to partner with the Lillian McDermott Radio Show / Classroom. But you too can become a sponsor by entering the enrolled student and helping us grow the show. There's so many different ways that we can do this, whether it's time, talent, or treasure. So check them all out. Support our sponsors the way that they're supporting the classroom. Without them, you wouldn't have this free information. So please help us grow the classroom in any way that you can. So Dr. Horowitz, we have lots of questions that and lots of people who are interested in this. Now, there's a question, but I don't know if it's a question or it's a statement because there's not a Q. I'm asking everybody to put a Q in front of the question, but I'm just going to read it, and I think I'm going to know what you're going to say. But Maureen wants to know, what is the #1 cause for patients not getting better? Is it mold or yeast or what? Is it unique to everybody?
It is unique. I mean, it's a very good question. I mean, Lyme is still probably really the linchpin here.
Mm-hmm.
If you get rid of Lyme, a lot of times the co-infections like Babesia, Bartonella, and others, they may not affect you as severely. But I must say that along with Lyme, these co-infections that we're finding, which I published in these 2 articles that were in the medical journals this year, they are making a lot of people sick. But you're correct. I mean, it's individualized, and mold toxins are showing up in over 70% of our patients. Some of these, like gliotoxins, are immunosuppressive. We did find that Lyme affects your immune system, where about 20% of our patients didn't make IgG antibodies, which you need to fight bacterial infections. So when people are sick and they're not getting better, the reason you've got to go to the MSIDS map is, for some, it might be low adrenals. For some, it might be that they're not sleeping with low adrenals. For some, it's they're not sleeping, low adrenals, and their mitochondria have been affected, and they still have Lyme and active right, so you get the idea. So the point is, yes, I mean, a lot of times it's environmental toxins, it's detoxification problems, it's leaky gut, it's food allergies. There's a lot of overlapping factors keeping people ill, and that's, in fact, the 16-point MSIDS model.
In the
book. Lyme is still the #1 factor that is making people severely ill. But I have to put it right behind there are the co-infections. I'm really finding the Dapsone protocol with this double dose we did seems to, for all intents and purposes, look like it's actually cured. I can't use the word because they might have a few bugs left in their body and they could relapse years from now. No one knows. But for all intents and purposes, they're in full remission for long periods of time.
Wow.
But the co-infections, if they took that Dapsone protocol and they had active day sweats, night sweats, chills, flushing, air hunger, I can't catch my breath, a cough I can't explain, those are classic symptoms of Babesia. They did not respond to the Dapsone protocol the same way, even though Dapsone hits Babesia. Or if they had Bartonella and they used the Dapsone, they did not get a long-lasting effect. So it's the co-infections, for me, on top of the Lyme. It's on top of the list, but yeah, right below it are environmental toxins, detoxification problems. By the way, even the psychiatric issues, you would describe me before, chemical sensitivity and these people that are sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people get, they get post-traumatic stress disorder,
Mm-hmm.
going to 20 doctors telling them it's all in their head.
Correct.
And I would like to tell them about a website. I just learned about this a few
Mm-hmm.
months ago at a mold conference in Arizona that I went to. It was a Lyme mold conference. There's a woman in Canada, Annie Hopper, and she developed this technique called Dynamic Neural Retraining System, DNRS. Her website is retrainingthebrain.com. When I spoke to doctors about this, a lot of the people that had POTS, low blood pressure, that couldn't get better because Lyme causes POTS, low blood pressure, they did this technique and it healed the vagus nerve. The people that had chemical sensitivity, that were super sensitive because they had mast cell activation, these cells in your body that are releasing histamine and leukotrienes and these inflammatory mediators. Some of them got help using this retraining the brain. Some of the people with depression and anxiety. So what I'm getting at here is that this is a natural technique. I just got it from my wife, who ordered it for her I saw Annie speak at the conference, and my wife has POTS, and even though her Lyme symptoms are better, if she doesn't take her medications to raise her blood pressure, I beat her in ping pong every day because her blood pressure is too low. So
you got to take it where you can.
And she doesn't like that. I can tell you this right now. She does not like this. So it's a technique. I'm sharing it with people. I have no financial, link to this at all. I'm sharing it because it may be a tool that people need to put in their toolbox. That if you've got depression, anxiety, post-treatment stress, you've got mold, you've got mast cell disorder, you have chronic Lyme. In fact, I'm pretty sure Annie was misdiagnosed. She discusses in her video, she has these pains moving around her body, and my wife's screaming at the video, "You've got chronic Lyme, it's Lyme." So I said, "Honey, stop yelling at the video." It's like she got better even not knowing it was Lyme. That's even better using this technique. So look into it. I think it's around $300. It's not a fortune like going to therapists for years. Therapists have their place.
I'll reach out to her. I'll have her come in the classroom. She
It'd
might
be very interesting. I think
it's a good word for me.
I think it's a look because it's a tool in the toolbox for people who are looking for answers.
Yes.
And I was impressed because I asked a lot of doctors. I don't have enough personal experience yet using it, but doctors I did 2 training sessions, by the way, for 80 doctors in the last 2 months that came to our medical center from all over the US, Canada, and Mexico. And I asked them, raise your hands. How many people here have used Annie Hopper? About 8 or 9 people raised their hands, thumbs up. It looks like doctors are getting results. So it's another tool for people.
Very good. And you know what? Like you said, we need to become our own MD. And that's why the book is so useful. So we can start checking off those listen to our body, which is what I'm hearing you say. So we have Alex, who says that she's from the UK. Thank you so much for all of you who are watching today in the classroom. She was misdiagnosed for 6 to 8 years and sadly now late stage chronic Lyme. Is there any hope? Can I be treated? Can she still be treated?
Yes. So she should know that I contacted her health department, the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK. I've had conversations with them before. And I have the emails of some of the people who work at the UK NHS. And I did send them some of the work that we've been doing. And I let them know about Dapsone protocols and the rest. And I extended an olive branch if they'd like to come and talk and speak. And we did speak by phone one time.
Nice.
So the answer is yes, there's hope. The answer is, though, is they put out what's called the NICE guidelines. There are separate guidelines that they came out with in the UK, which are guidelines for treating Lyme and diagnosing and treating. And unfortunately, these guidelines don't really help people with chronic persistent Lyme because there's so many unanswered questions, at least among the researchers and a lot of the doctors out there. It's not a mystery for someone like me who's been doing this for so long. In fact, when I first met with Ben Beard from the CDC, who was sitting on the Washington group, the first time we met, one of the moderators, John from Johns Hopkins University, John Alcott, said, turn to the person next to you and for 2 minutes, tell him whatever you'd like to say. And I turned to Ben and I said, Ben, why don't you come to my medical office sometime? Come over my house. You'll stay over. You'll see what I'm doing with patients so you can see like how this works. I think he was a little shocked. And then, of course, we've become, friends over time. He's a very sweet guy. But it's like, yeah, there's hope. But you got to be communicating, with your doctors. Your doctors have to read these 2 articles that I just published on Dapsone combination therapy. They should read my book. They should look at the HHS.gov tick-borne disease working group website, which has like probably close to 800 or 900 pages of peer review references, most up to date on epidemiology, diagnosis, treatment, co-infections, access to care. It's all in there.
Yep.
Share it with your doctor. Share it with the UK National Health Service.
Okay, so I know that we're almost at the end of the podcast, but I want you guys to stick around because any questions that you have will be if we'll go a little bit longer for 5 or 10 minutes with Dr. Horowitz. But for those of you who are listening on podcast or watching later on YouTube, please know that you can always join us live in the classroom at facebook.com/Lillian's radio show. And that we can't wait for somebody else to heal us. The power is within us, right, Dr. Horowitz?
It is. You do need to find a good team of people.
Of course.
But yes, I mean, you have to be your own patient advocate. And that was actually the Atlantic piece this morning is Megan just kept going from doctor to doctor, being her own advocate until she got answers. She was just not going to accept I got to be chronically tired with aches and pains, with nerve pains and brain fog. You don't accept that. You look for answers and you don't give up until you find them.
Amen. Amen. And that's how I discovered that I had breast implant illness. And we're going to be getting rid of that problem pretty soon. And I'm going to see, if we just chip away, everybody is different. Whatever it is that will make you feel better may be different than mine. But if we start working together and sharing this information, can you imagine what all of us together can do? Dr. Richard Horowitz, I'm excited that we're going to have a little bit of a private party in a little bit. But thank you for everything that you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And for those of you, remember, we'll be right here waiting for you. Be your own advocate. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Richard Horowitz wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. The best ever, Dr. Horowitz. Here we go.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Let's look at some of these questions real quick, Dr. Horowitz, because I know your wife is waiting for you for this date that you have coming along. So, Nuala from North Ireland, thank you so much for watching today. All of you, especially worldwide, I just love it. Okay, so my 13-year-old has chronic Lyme, unable to take antibiotics, can't get any medic to prescribe IV, but doing fabulous now with a Chinese herbalist. Okay, so let me see, where else does it go? My question here. Okay, so what supplements do you recommend? It's true that Dr. Horowitz no longer treats Lyme patients. Are you semi-retired?
That's actually not true.
I know that. What?
No, I'm not retired.
I would have heard about that soon.
I'm not retired and I'm not planning on retiring. I'm working 2 days a week because when I started working for HHS, for Health and Human Services, it took a lot of my time, so I had to go down on my clinical practice. But no, I still have an office. We still have John Fallon, my nurse practitioner. We're still looking for other people to join us, to help. So no, I'm not retired.
I remember when you first started, when the first time we met and you were in the classroom, you said you had like a wait list of 400 patients.
Oh, it was 1,000.
1,000. That's it.
It was 1,000 people.
It was like, it was a lot. I remember a lot.
So now what I'm doing is now I'm training the doctors. So as I said, we just did 2 trainings. It was a weekend seminar. I start on Friday night at around 7:30. Mm-hmm. We went through this past one, which was 2 weeks ago. I went through at 11 o'clock. It was 4 hours on Friday night. Wow. They got up in the morning. I lectured from 9 to 12:30. They had a lecture from 12:30 to 1:30. We came back at 2 and we lectured till 6 o'clock, came back Sunday morning and did this from 9 to 12. I think I was talking for something like 12 to 14 hours.
Wow.
With like 7 different slides, all peer review, hard science. So I am now training doctors. And for those people who cannot find doctors to help you, you should speak to the LDA, the LymeDisease.org, LDA.org. I gave the list of participants of those who've been trained in the 16-point MSIDS model and those who've been trained in dapsone combination therapy and integrative functional medicine things we're doing. Pat has that list and she can refer to doctors in your area so that you can get some of these doctors who've been trained in the model.
Very good. Okay, so her question is about supplements. Are there any supplements that we can take to help alleviate symptoms? So,
it's a very difficult question to answer. She was discussing that Chinese herbs helped, and we have worked with Dr. Zhang's traditional Chinese medicine, and, Coptis, Hutinia, Artemisia, HH. There's a lot of herbs that are in Chinese medicine that do help people. They call it goo disease. It's like a wet heat disease in Chinese medicine. We've seen probably 70% of the patients respond if they do Coptis and HH or Coptis HH and R5081 and certain other herbs. But you can't give generalities of what herbs to use for people because the problem is some people may do very well with Chinese medicine. Some people don't. Some people may herx with the Cowden protocol. You were discussing Lee Cowden, which is Cemento, Cat's Claw, Banderol, Hutinia. Some don't. Some people get help with other herbs like BB1 and BB2 from Susan McCamish. The Byron White protocol is a very powerful protocol. AL for Lyme, ABARD, ABAB. There's a lot of herbal protocols out there, but there's not one for each person because people react differently. And what we generally find is, yes, they help, but unfortunately, they're not going to be enough to knock this thing out of your body. But for people where the load of the organisms has been lowered sufficiently, these herbs can keep people in a good state of health sometimes for long periods of time, as long as you have addressed the points on the 16-point MSIDS model, like you don't have low hormones, low adrenals, low sex hormones, low thyroid, you're getting enough sleep, you're not eating gluten and wheat, and if you have leaky gut, go heal it. You've just got to follow all the things that are in this book that will help decrease inflammation and that treat the downstream effects of the inflammation. So it is a personalized precision medicine model, and that's actually the 2 studies that I was talking about that we published this past year.
Yeah, one size does not fit all. But, when I was sharing with Dr. Horowitz before we came on air that, well, I don't know if I actually said this to you because brain fog accompanies breast implant illness. And I am so happy I can finally admit that on the air. But when I said a prayer for my body to lead me to the truth of why I was feeling all these symptoms. And when you trust your intuition, and you're really big on intuitive healing as well, would you like to share a little bit about, following our intuition and it leading us to the path that's right for us?
So physicians in medical school are, generally taught to use their left brain, the logical, very analytical part of the brain. And listen, it's great. I can go through, for example, and look at these 16 points, and my left brain will go, okay, it's this. But ultimately, I have to make a choice at some point in time, which treatment or treatments I'm going to prioritize first, which ones might have the best effect on patients. And that's where the right brain comes in. So one of the things that is really great about using the right brain and the way you access it is through things like meditation, right? You can relax your mind. You can go into an open, clear, empty meditative space, learn to relax, and basically using your gut. And I learned from intuitives that have actually taught me this, including doctors who are intuitives. Yeah. Mona Lisa Schultz had taught me years ago.
She's been in a classroom many times,
yeah. And so you know what she says, which is gut it.
Got it.
Got it.
Got it.
So not got it, which is use your right brain gut. And, so I've learned over time, and I actually taught this to the doctors in the 2 training sessions. We did a whole session on meditation, on calm abiding meditation, of how to calm the mind and keep it in one place. And then Vipassana insight meditation on how to look at thoughts and emotions that arise in the mind and to see their nature. And then Mahamudra meditation, which is essentially non-distraction, non-conception, and non-meditation. In other words, how to rest in this open, empty, clear essence of mind that is very loving and very generous and very wide. Like, how do you access the state? We discussed it actually, and I did tell the people there that I do believe that probably the best healing you're going to do with patients, number one, is set the intention to heal your patient, and the patients know when you really care. So if you're with a doctor who really cares, that intention has a healing effect. And I've spoken to lots of doctors about this. So the first most important thing is the intention. I really want to work for your benefit. I really want to make you better. That has a healing effect on patients. In fact, it's been published in the medical literature. Yeah. It's not some woo-woo idea that's not been proven. It's been published.
I know.
But then the right brain, yes, there's a way to access it. So I do think it's quite important, and they complement each other so that healthcare practitioners can be the very best that they can be.
Yes, very good, very good. Okay, and I know that there's lots of questions, and I'm hoping that Dr. Horowitz will be able to come back and maybe we can address some of the questions that we don't answer today. So please understand that Dr. Horowitz has a stopping point here. Okay, so Kate shared that she's been diagnosed with Lyme disease, but her face is swollen. What does that indicate? A swelling of the face. Is that something that she can look at?
So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a classic manifestation of Lyme. I mean, there are several things she would need to look into, which is, are her lymphatics draining? Does she have a sinus infection? There could be poor lymphatic drainage from that. I mean, normally when you get a Bell's palsy, if it affects the seventh cranial nerve, you don't usually necessarily see swelling of the face. You basically see just, drooping of the mouth and the eyelid and the rest. So swelling is a different story. You have to see whether the swelling is coming from swollen lymph nodes. Again, is there blockage of lymph nodes that's going on in the neck, in the anterior, posterior cervical chain? What's happening with the sinuses, with drainage? I mean, that's some of the places you need to look. And of course, the teeth and the dental areas, just to make sure that there's nothing going on there.
Have you, just now that you mentioned the mouth, have you looked into root canals and possibly causing Lyme-like symptoms? So,
the problem with the root canals, and there's a lot in dentistry on this, is there's something called endotoxemia. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that if you've not completely, and most dentists will tell you this, if you've not completely eliminated and sterilized the root canal when they do it, you might have a small leakage of bacterial toxins that's continuous from the root canals. And I mean, I know dentists do the best they can, but if you speak to biological dentists, they'll tell you that this endotoxemia, so let's say you have toxins that are coming from Lyme, you have toxins that are coming from heavy metals, you have toxins that are coming from mold, and your detoxification pathways aren't working, and now you've got endotoxemia either from the gut because you've got the wrong type of bacteria there, Prevotella species, Clostridium species, there's a bunch, or you've got endotoxemia from root canals. That combination of toxins that are coming from multiple sources, it definitely can make you sick. And I have patients that have, gone for root canals. They've had some of them removed. I had to have one of mine removed years ago when they put in eugenol because I started getting horrible spasms in my back because the chemical that they put in, I was chemically sensitive. And I'm not normally horribly chemically sensitive, but I sure was to the chemical that they used in this particular product. So, the dental area is an area that is not talked about much, and it needs to be, because they're finding now, even in Alzheimer's plaques, that when they look in the biofilms of Alzheimer's plaques, there's a bacteria called Porphyromonas gingivalis. This is the bacteria that's underneath the biofilms because you've got an infection in the teeth from a gingival infection. So it's like the bacteria traveling right from your gums up into the brain. Biofilms are forming, and the hypothesis from Harvard researchers and others is that these tau proteins and these amyloid proteins that you're seeing formed are actually because there's biofilms, the bugs are underneath it, like herpes viruses, Lyme disease, chlamydia pneumonia, Porphyromonas gingivalis. Pesticides have been published that are showing up in the brain of people with Alzheimer's, driving amyloid. It's multifactorial. In other words, it's MSIDS. It's multifactorial causes driving inflammation, and that's why we need a paradigm shift. From the one cause, one disease model that we're now using for chronic disease. We've got to shift the paradigm. So yes, it's a very good point bringing up the teeth. It's definitely one of those things where people need to look into it because it can be a source of problems. Absolutely.
And, one of the doctors that I had in the classroom, Dr. Carlos Garcia, who wrote the book, Cancer is a Symptom, he addresses root canals. He says that people that have cancer must remove their root canal. In the last class that he was in, the last lesson that he shared in the classroom, he made it very clear that every tooth is an organ. It's its own organ. And if you have appendicitis and they cut and detach the appendix from the organ, if you have appendicitis and your appendix needs to come out, and you leave the appendix in the body, that's eventually going to release toxins. And he was sharing that every tooth has a meridian point, and it will eventually travel to that part of the body. So there's so much we don't know. And so that's what's so, I don't want okay, let me tell you what I do want. I want people to use this as, maybe that's part of where I need to go in, as opposed to freaking out and saying, oh my God, I don't know what to do right next. How can we, because I know all of you have some questions, and I know I promised Dr. Horowitz that I'd let him, be brief afterwards in the class. I bet we'll hopefully get him back. How can we calm ourselves down and look at the evidence no different than 2 + 2 = 4? No emotion, you talk about that. Just looking at the facts and chipping away. What are some of the pearls that you can share so that we can start taking our health back?
So this relates actually to a Facebook post that I put on today when the Atlantic article came out, which is there's a lot of Lyme disease is a medical political issue. It's not just a medical one, it's political.
Yeah.
If you look at the science, and I mean really look at the hard peer review science, and this is in the congressional documents and it's on, again, these subcommittee reports. That's why I wanted people to look at the website. You will see that there is adequate scientific evidence that these tests are not reliable, that these bacteria can persist, that co-infections can play a role. It's not that this is honestly a great mystery. The problem is that there's a political process that exists with different sets of guidelines that insurance companies and doctors use.
Mm-hmm.
And so honestly, what you need to sift through is the difference between the politics and the difference between the hard science. And when I've spoken to doctors from the IDSA, who they have new guidelines that are being reviewed right now,
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, because I've not actually reviewed them in detail at this point yet, I can tell you that from people who have, that it's the same old. And that's actually not true, because there's a lot of science that's changed in the last decade. If there wasn't, I wouldn't know about biofilms. I wouldn't know about persistiforms. I wouldn't be putting in grants for multi-center dapsone trials.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have people in remission on dapsone combination therapy or people herxing on disulfiram. The point is, you got to follow the science, and just because there's not double-blind placebo-controlled studies on every one of these things, guess what? 95% of all the drugs and everything we do in medicine has never had double-blind placebo-controlled trials. That's just a fact. Those of us doing this, we learn as we go. Some trials have been done, but if you look at the hard evidence, and again, if you're not a scientist and you don't have a biological background, it's not as easy. But you know something? I write these books and I write them for doctors and the public. I do it to teach people science. You must learn. And there's really no other way around it. And you said it earlier, you've got to be your own advocate.
Yes.
So, work with a functional medicine. You might have a great internist who doesn't know functional medicine. So stick with your internist, but work with a functional medicine doctor who can complement, right?
Yeah.
Or you may have a great internist and functional medicine doctor in one, but you might want to use a Chinese herbalist or someone else who can. So the point is you have to put together your own healthcare team. And if you have a really educated doctor, of course, they can guide you in this. But you have to be your own advocate. And this book really does educate people. Not that I'm expecting, by the way, that they're going to figure out everything that's wrong with them reading the book, but it will give them and their doctors clues to places where they may not have looked.
Yeah. And, and I want to add to what you just said, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, as a patient advocate, as an advocate for myself. When you go to your doctor and your doctor starts treating you like you are a hypochondria, or it's beyond their pay grade and they're trying to make you feel bad so that they can feel better, look at your doctor. If the doctor doesn't look healthy, fire them, because if they can't take care of themselves, they cannot take care of you. Move on, find the right advocate for you. And so, Dr. Horowitz, from the moment I met you, and we realized that we had Dr. Mona Lisa Schultz as a connection. Before that, you had me at hello. What can I say? But you have empowered me to be my own MD. And I've used that since you said it in the classroom back then in 2015, when we first met, or 2016. And I just absolutely am grateful, not only for the work you're doing with Lyme disease, but that you're not sitting there, I'm the doctor, you need to listen to everything I'm saying. You're saying, no, you work with Olive, work with a team, and empower yourself. Don't wait until somebody else tries to make you feel better. And I love that about you. And I am so grateful that you're going back and you're going to continue to be the voice in Washington, right?
So I'm sitting, the HHS rehired me, so I'm sitting on their Babesia and tick-borne virus subcommittee. So again, I'm in contact. So I was, offered the position to come back and serve. And I'm happy to serve the people of this country. We got a call recently from the governor's office to put in an application for the state level. We'll see whether I'm accepted for working with the Department of Health.
Yeah.
I'm open to working with anyone who wants to help people. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm happy to share the research. I'm happy to share my experience. I'm happy to have them come work with me in my office. It's like, we just need to get this over with. This is a full-blown epidemic.
Okay.
And the more people who are involved, the more people working together. We can't solve this if we don't work together. We can't fight each other and solve this problem. It's time for people to really come together.
Yeah, and I want to encourage all of you who are watching on Facebook Live or later on listening on, well, you're not going to get this information on podcast, but if you're watching on YouTube, take these videos, forward it to your doctors. And if they don't even look at it, if they don't even open it or watch it, you need to move on. You need to find someone that will fight with you. Not just for you, but fight with you for your best health that you can possibly have. So, be your own advocate. And Doctor, and I'm so sorry that we can't get to all the questions, but Dr. Horowitz,
I'll be back on the show at some point, Lily.
I know you will. And I'm so excited. What an honor to have you on. Thank you so much, Dr. Horowitz. The book is called How Can I Get Better? And you can find Dr. Horowitz at cangetbetter.com. And people, if they want to reach out to you, Dr. Horowitz, how can they?
Most of the updates I'm doing these days is more on Facebook. Anything new in the Lyme literature, I'm posting on Facebook. Dr. Richard Horowitz.
Dr. Richard Horowitz, and that's Dr. Horowitz.
Dr. Richard Horowitz.
Dr. Richard Horowitz, and so you can. But hopefully, Dr. Horowitz, if you can go onto my site and you can see all the questions that were asked. If you have time, I don't know if you do. I don't want to ask. If you can't do it, that's fine. I'll just save them for next time that you come on.
Very good.
So now, thank you so much for all of you for watching. Please share it. Go ahead.
And Lillian, blessings for you for your upcoming surgery, that everything go well.
Thank you. And I'll keep you posted. And by the way, Dr. Horowitz is a contributor in my book. So that will be, I put a little hold on that because I've been focusing on my health issues and my journey back to health. But there's going to be a book with Dr. Horowitz's story is fabulous.
And I have a new book I'm in the process of writing now too, that I think people will enjoy, and it will hopefully be out by next year, at the end of next year. Absolutely.
And that creativity is going to shine through those pages too. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook.com, stay close to the classroom, like, follow us, and share this information so that we can grow together. Until now, we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And I am